Hey, welcome back to the Stay Home Artist channel. Today, let's go over the last flower on this bouquet sampler, which is our iris. And this whole thing is just going to be a satin stitch with only 2 strands of thread with our size 10 embroidery needle. But I'll be using 2 different shades of purple, one lighter, one darker, as well as yellow. So I'm starting with the darkest shade of purple right now. It might be a little bit hard to tell on camera the difference between the shades, but it definitely will add some dimension. The top 4 petals on this flower are going to all be stitched using this darker shade of purple. And I'm just using a satin stitch going lengthwise across each flower petal, following the same angle the whole time, and creating very small little stitches for the rounded edges of the flower petals, which can be a little bit tricky, but if you use a smaller needle like this size 10 needle and only 2 strands of thread, you have a lot better chances of filling in the curves as seamlessly as possible. Now for this last top flower petal, I'm going at a little bit of a weird angle, and you don't have to do this. I don't know if I would necessarily do the same angle again, but I wanted to add a little bit more dimension to the iris since it is just flat on our hoop right here, but I wanted to give it the effect of a curved petal. So I went at this sort of angle, hoping that it would create that effect, and I feel like it did. So I'm just doing the same thing with my satin stitching, very fine small stitches, especially along the curves and edges of the flower petal. Now before I add the lighter shade of purple, I'm going to fill in this yellow area, and once again I'm just using the satin stitch with 2 strands of my yellow thread, using my satin stitching lengthwise of the shape. Now I've switched over to my lightest shade of purple, and I'm just going to be stitching around that yellow stitching I did in the previous step and filling in the rest of this shape on the bottom flower petal. Now our last step is to fill in the smallest flower petal on our iris, and normally I would suggest stitching a satin stitch lengthwise, but because this is the smallest one and because of the angle it's at, to add some dimension, I'm actually just going to make my stitching vertical rather than horizontal. And now you have your perfect little iris. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something new. If you did, please hit subscribe and I'll see you again next time. Thank you.